A recent article featured in our very own coffee news segment shined a light on a shocking counterfeit coffee scandal that took place in Germany. Back in October, it was reported that a massive shipment of counterfeit Nescafé coffee had made its way into German consumers' hands. Quote, "The fakes were reported by Nestlé Deutschland, which said it had discovered counterfeits of what appeared to be an old style of Nescafé Gold jar, which is no longer commercially available and has not been used for years. The counterfeits were neither manufactured nor distributed by Nestlé, according to the company, and were discovered mainly at markets and smaller shops. The outlets have been asked to stop selling the illegal products, and Nestlé has also asked the authorities to look into the fraud. We are shocked by the criminal activities and deeply condemn the fact that our brand has been illegally counterfeited and marketed," said the company in a statement. End quote. This scandal was particularly shocking because the brand being counterfeited is so well known. We don't tend to associate large brands like Nestlé with counterfeit products. We know these massive international brands have very strict regulators overseeing them, as well as their own interest in product authenticity. That's what made this particular story so shocking. But sadly, this story of faux foodstuffs is not an uncommon one, not at all uncommon. The amount of history available on this subject may shock you, going far beyond the coffee industry into what I can only assume is virtually every part of your kitchen. Today, we are going to explore a short list of some of the worst offenders of fake foods and counterfeit coffee. Hold on to your hats, everyone. This episode may change the way you look at food forever. If you're already privy to this subject, you may have heard of the Italian olive oil controversy. This one runs deep. So deep that the Italian police had to enact an entire operation around it. In the mid-2010s, the Italian police executed Operation Mamma Mia. They uncovered a scam perpetrated by the Italian mafia to pass off low-quality oils from Spain and Greece as top-shelf, extra-virgin Italian olive oil. This amounted to a multi-million-dollar olive oil scam, an entire olive oil ripoff industry. According to the Food Fraud Database, 16% of olive oil is fraudulent. Extra virgin olive oil, usually claimed to be imported from Spain or Italy, were often not from those countries. Similarly, the oil was often diluted with other cheaper oils, such as sunflower oil or vegetable oil. In at least one recent case, what was supposed to be pure olive oil actually contained pig fat. Maybe you're using that olive oil for your homemade pizza. Well, you're going to want to be careful with the cheese that you select as well. You're getting more than just what's in the block when you go and purchase shredded cheese from the store. Wood pulp in cheese is a common adulteration, and it's one that gets a little bit trickier when we talk about faux foods. You see, cellulose, a legal food-grade additive, is essentially wood pulp. It's a plant material that's added to shredded cheese as an anti-clumping agent. Legally, cheese producers are allowed up to 4% cellulose in their shredded cheese. But companies have been caught in the past increasing these levels to step on their product and save costs, bulk up their cheese inventory so that they can sell more total product and make more profit. In 2017, the owners of the Castle Cheese brand were hit with a $500,000 fine after selling cheese with too many adulterants in it. Quote, "The companies had previously admitted that their Parmesan and Romano products did not meet Food and Drug Administration standards and were adulterated by other ingredients. But the companies represented to customers that the cheese was 100% real." End quote. Now, is this cellulose consumption super harmful to the human body? Seemingly not. But again, you're there to buy cheese, and you're getting a stepped-on product, a diluted product. Not to mention, have you ever had a good freshly shredded cheese right off the block? Who cares if it clumps up a little? It's way better, way more delicious than that packaged, wood pulp adulterated cheese. Honey is another perpetrator. In a recent study, investigators were unable to determine the origin of various store-bought honeys because they lacked any pollen within them. Usually, honey contains some amount of pollen, identifying the source of the honey, like honeysuckle, orange blossom, or avocado. This honey, however, contained no pollen, which either meant it was fake honey to begin with, or highly filtered to remove all the pollen, a costly and unlikely scenario. In fact, honey that is so thoroughly filtered as to contain no pollen violates the FDA's guidelines to regard what can be legally called honey. It's more plausible that the product they are dealing with is faux honey, comprised of other substances that are clearly not honey, like cane sugar with honeysuckle fragrance and food coloring added to it, which is then formed into a block and sold as honey. Faux honey makes up 7% of food fraud cases in total, according to a study in the Journal of Food Sciences. 75% of honey revised in this study contained no pollen, meaning they were not technically honey under FDA regulations. The faux honey matter came to the public's attention after China began to ship the fake product to the Philippines for relabeling and export to America. And of course, speaking of exporting to America, coffee has been such a valuable commodity for so long that it's been counterfeited time and time again. Lower cost Robusta coffee has often been passed off as Arabica beans, the oldest trick in the coffee counterfeit book. Bags of Kona coffee, supposedly coming from Hawaii, are in actuality blends, which contain only 10% or less of actual Kona beans. This drives the price consumers are willing to pay for real Kona downward, since they can get the fake Kona blends for far less. Or, distributors will simply relabel the origins of coffee, making them appear to come from regions that fetch a higher price. Instant coffee is even more fraudulent, as you can easily step on products with other ingredients, like cereals, starch, figs, and other adulterants. I mentioned the German coffee episode, but you may also remember the Vietnamese Scandal featured on Coffee News not too long before that. Vietnam, unfortunately, has a pretty rich history of counterfeiting coffee. Back in 2018, there was a scandal so big where a coffee-producing family from Vietnam was using horribly toxic materials to fake their coffee. They were using things like dirt and rock dust and even used batteries in their fake coffee production. I don't even know how you do that. Utilizing fake batteries, is that for the acid? I do not understand. Look into that article yourself. They ended up raiding this farm where they seized 12 tons of counterfeit coffee. 12 tons. Now, of course, this highlights the importance of a transparent supply chain, also the importance of an educated consumer, and also the importance of independent regulatory bodies. When there's so much big money in coffee, there are going to be bad players. That's just how human nature works. So whose job is it to make sure that we aren't drinking battery acid coffee? Well, the most surefire way is for the consumer to cut out the supply chain altogether. If you can get your honey locally from a beekeeper or start beekeeping yourself, then you virtually know your product is the real deal. Same goes for fresh pressed olive oil from your local farmer's market or cheese from your local dairy. If you don't have local access, then your next best bet is to go with a reputable, transparent brand, kind of like what Purity Coffee does, where they visit the farms, we see their production, we take video, we interview the farmers, we get to know their entire process. That's the next best thing you can get to local. Because honestly, it's hard to rely on all those people within the supply chain to all do the right thing all the time. Not to mention dig into their own upstream and make sure that everything is in tip-top shape. It's hard to expect producers to go that extra mile. That's honestly why I fell in love with Purity Coffee. The fact that they personally know and work with their farmers. The fact that they independently lab test their product, even doing R&D into a healthier coffee. But honestly, all of that is an extraordinary amount of due diligence. You can't expect every coffee producer to go above and beyond like that. So really, the only other hope we have are regulatory bodies, those specifically in the coffee industry, and also the governmental bodies like the FDA, etc. And to be honest, it's easy to skirt regulators, right? The FDA doesn't crack down on this sort of thing the same way the DEA cracks down on drugs. I mean, that's why these fake coffees exist. That's why it's profitable to do this. So I think it's a combination of things. As the consumer becomes more educated about coffee, hopefully the producers provide a more transparent and sustainable supply chain picture as a marketing advantage. And at the same time, hopefully regulatory bodies like the International Coffee Councils and government bodies like the FDA, hopefully they also become more educated and take these sorts of things more seriously. I think that's the only way that we put counterfeit coffee more or less behind us forever. That's why it is so incredibly important to vote with your dollar, especially when it comes to things like coffee beans. You have to choose wisely, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this shorter little expose that I put together today. I went down a rabbit hole with this one, and we might have to do a follow-up. We'll be back with interviews at our regularly scheduled time, so stay tuned, stay subscribed. I appreciate all of you. Remember to use code CHSPodcast if you're picking up any Purity coffee. And remember to get your food locally whenever you can to avoid all those faux foodstuffs. And of course, avoid that counterfeit coffee. We'll see you next time, everybody. Have an extraordinary day. Bye-bye.